Memento mori is a Latin theory and practice where one reflects on their mortality. In fact, it's translated as remember that you have to die. Now, there's plenty of art out there that contemplates death, but one type in particular are called vanitas, meaning vanity. Now, these are symbolic still lifes that are meant to teach the viewer about the transience of life, the futility of pleasure, and the certainty of death. And one object that shows up over and over again in these paintings are the skull. So let's get right to it. This week's 5 artists in 5 minutes, all about skulls. This should be fun. Since I was already talking about it, let's start off with an example of a Vanita by Dutch Golden Age painter Harmen Steenbeck. The skull is a focal point of the work as the universal icon of death, but since Vanitas were made as a religious work to teach morals, everything is carefully chosen and placed. The dramatic lighting, the candle's flame dying out, everything serves a purpose. From the vanity of the physical luxuries like expensive dyed silk, the both beautiful and deadly samurai sword, and a rare shell, to the indulgences of human knowledge and pleasure of the senses with the books and flute. The Vanitas tell us that in the end, in death, they are all meaningless. Now, you may have heard of Damien Hirst. He's the guy who made a skull, basically the most expensive skull ever, by taking a cast of it and covering it with diamonds. But did you know there is actually a history of covering skulls with precious stones? This is the mosaic mask of Tezcatlipoca from the 15th to 16th century Mexico. The mosaic is believed to be the god Tezcatlipoca, or smoking mirror, a central deity in Aztec religion. The materials used were sourced from faraway places with exotic materials. The distinctive black and blue stripes are made with alternating bands of blue turquoise and black lignite. The eyes are made of a polished iron pyrite for the iris, and the rings are made of white conch shell. The nasal cavity is lined by bright red, thorny oyster shell. The deerskin straps allow it to be worn as a part of priestly regalia. During the Black Plague, as you can imagine, death was on the minds of many, and an interesting genre began to pop up called the Dance of Death. Here is an example by German painter and sculptor Bernd Noeke. In it, death has resurrected and are causing people of all walks of life to dance along the grave. The preacher, the pope, the empress, the cardinal, and the king remind us that no matter how rich or powerful you are, you aren't immune to death. This painting was actually destroyed during the bombing in World War II. You might recognize this next painting, but did you ever notice there's a skull in it? This is Hans Holbein the Younger's The Ambassadors. The skull in the middle is a distorted image that is often used as an example of anamorphosis in painting. This painting is a double portrait where the figure on the left is in secular attire while the one on the right is dressed in clerical clothes. They flank a table displaying books, 2 globes, scientific instruments, and an oriental carpet. It's been described as a symbolic unification of capitalism and the church, but others suggest that there's overtones of religious strife, pointing at a lute with a broken string next to the hymn book. Anyways, back to the skull. This curious distortion called anamorphic perspective was an invention of the early Renaissance meant to be a visual puzzle. The viewer must approach the painting from a very specific angle to see the skull in its accurate proportion. The last thing I want to share with you guys is this. This is called a kapala. Sanskrit for skull, it's a cup made from a human skull used in ritual in both Hindu Tantra and Buddhist Tantra, particularly in Tibet. They're elaborately carved or mounted with precious metals and jewels. They're thought to aid in achieving transcendental state and meditation, and to please the gods by offering gifts to them. And if you're wondering where they get the bones to work with, they're from the Carmel ground, or sky burials. It's a custom where the deceased undergoes a number of rituals, is dismembered, and then placed in the open air on a mountaintop, as a means to assist the soul's ascent and reincarnation. A little bit spooky for your casual Sunday YouTube video, but you know what? They're not your typical summer horror stories either. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Be sure to come back next week for another 5 artists in 5 minutes. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.